So I was just flicking through YouTube and the video where Richard Hammond from Top Gear drives a Formula 1 car popped up. So I thought I'd take a look at this Top Gear video and break down Richard's driving, what's real, what's not, and what's just a little bit of Top Gear artistic license. So I've coached many regular people, non-professional racing drivers, to actually drive a Formula 1 car. So I know how they react when they jump into a Formula 1 car for the very first time.
And there's going to be no Top Gear nonsense today. I'm not going to race it against a cheetah or a bat on a superbike. My mission is simply to get that round a track.
A World Series car with twice the power of the Formula Renault.
It's going quiet.
And no wonder. The straight line speed I could cope with, but in the corners I just couldn't think fast enough to react.
So there, the World Series by Renault car is a massive step up from the Formula Renault. It's actually probably bigger from the Formula Renault to the World Series by Renault car, from the World Series by Renault car to the Formula 1 car. These cars have about 500 brake horsepower. They have a lot of downforce coming from the floor. The minimum corner speed of these cars is very, very quick. So the jump there is massive. And again, you get this massive kind of sensitivity feeling in the car because of the vibration, and the noise of this car is absolutely massive. Again, it's a big step up in braking and cornering performance, even compared to the Formula Renault car. And obviously it's got those massive slick tyres, which will be giving a lot of mechanical grip, as well as the aero grip from the wings. You can see here that Richard Hammond's had a spin. This is quite easy to do on the accelerator pedal, especially in a slow corner on the Stowe track. It's pretty much all slow corners, and as I mentioned before, he won't be able to keep the heat in the tyres. And so if he just gets on the accelerator a little bit too much, a bit too much of a blip on the throttle, it will spin those rear tyres up and it'll have the spin as you've just seen here in the footage.
It's just there's so much to learn. I can't drive fast enough to get the heat in the brakes, and then there's no brakes. I've just grappled with, 500 brake horsepower and a 500 kilo car, and I'm halfway there.
So yes, that is quite a lot to take on, to jump from a Formula Renault to a World Series car. He's trying to do it in a day, I suppose, here. Typically we have a couple of years to do that as we're coming up through the ranks of racing, so it's quite a lot to do.
I was summoned to look at the readouts from my onboard telemetry.
You're riding the brake and you're riding the accelerator, believe it or not.
Is it because I'm doing left foot braking?
Yeah, and then the other thing is you've been quite severe on one of the downshifts and you've actually put 8.5 on the motor.
If I'd done what I did on that lap in a Formula 1 car, what would have happened?
You'd have probably spun it and wrecked the engine.
So a couple of things here. Typically pressing the throttle and the brake pedal at the same time is very common for a new driver coming into a car that has two pedals. I didn't mention it before, but the World Series by Renault car has a hand clutch, and therefore it only has two pedals, the accelerator and the brake, down in the footwell of the cockpit there. So it's really common that drivers will actually get a little bit confused pressing the accelerator and then overlapping and pressing the brake at the same time. And then what the engineers mentioned with the over-rev here is a little bit of artistic license from Top Gear here. These cars, the World Series by Renault car and the F1 car, are paddle shift, and they have a GCU, a gearbox control unit, that will not allow a downshift when the engine wouldn't be able to handle it. So if it was going to over rev the engine with a downshift, the computer system there wouldn't allow the car to do it. So this is a little bit of drama for Top Gear here.
I needed lots more time in the World Series car, but to cope with the cornering forces.
He's going to come off, I'm not joking.
His neck will go soon, so he needs to drive the Formula 1.
So this is very true. These World Series by Renault cars will pull 3.5, 4G in the corners, and if a driver isn't specifically trained for that, especially with their neck just here, they will really struggle with it even after maybe 5 or 6 laps.
Before I moved on, Yoda gave me a pep talk.
Everything you experience in the World Series car is probably going to be more than 3 times as much, maybe more, in the Formula One.
I was running, my thinking time, that was my problem. When I had a bit of an off, it's because I thought I'd left it too late to brake, then I realised I hadn't. But because I was thinking that, the car was already round the corner and I was in the wrong gear and I span. I can't think fast enough, more than anything else.
So again, there's a little bit of drama being added here. The Formula One car isn't 3 times as difficult as the World Series by Renault car, maybe 40 or 50% more difficult, more quick if you want to put it that way. But they're obviously trying to hand things up a little bit here.
So now I've got control of the throttle. That's me. Dear God, that's me revving a Formula One engine.
So when I'm coaching normal people to do this, this is the moment where you see their eyes just open up. The noise of this car is just incredible. I stand in front of the Formula One car with the radio on, so I'm talking to the driver and I'm explaining to them the processes and what they need to do to keep the car running and pull away. And as soon as the mechanics start the engine, you see their eyes just open up like this, and almost everything that you brief them with goes out the window completely because they're just so overwhelmed with the noise and the fact that they're just about to drive a Formula One car.
A Formula One engine.
The eyes of the whole F1 team were upon me. This was it. It had taken me a minute to do 40 feet.
So what you're seeing here is him trying to pull away, and even though it seems like it would be very simple, it's very, very difficult. The hand clutch in the F1 car here is just down here on the left or on the right hand side of the steering wheel. It's a little paddle that has a spring behind it, and it has 0 feel. It's not like a normal clutch pedal in a road car where you can feel the biting point, you can feel the clutch pedal coming up. It's just, it has a linear feel to it. It's just basically a spring. So you just edge the paddle out and you have to wait until you feel the car moving. Now, he keeps on trying to go, and you might notice that it's not stalling, the engine's still running, and that's the anti-stall in the ECU of the car. So if the ECU, if the computer in the engine thinks that the car is going to stall, it will actually dip the clutch again and stop the car from stalling.
After the team had laughed at me and warmed the tyres to make them more grippy, they sent me on my way.
Oh God. It feels totally different to the other car. Totally different. Turning left, my God, I'm in a Formula One car. I'm going to try the throttle and see it. Oh my God! Holy mother! There's no temperature in the brakes!
In the half a lap I'd managed, the car had made a big impression.
So apparently at this point he's only done half a lap. He's managed to get up to 3rd gear, which, you know, on this small slow circuit is probably about right. Then he's locked up and finally is spun. But if you go back and you look at the way it's been edited and the way that he turns the car hard into the corner, I think again we're probably adding to a little bit of Top Gear drama and trying to cause that spin. He wouldn't typically be driving the car into the corner with a sudden turn of the steering wheel like this. If you look in all the other footage, he's really nice and smooth. So I think they're trying to add another layer of drama here.
It's absolutely the most glorious machine in the world.
Wait till you get into 2nd.
I'm going as fast as I feel I can, and it's not fast enough to keep heating the tyres, which means I've got no grip, let alone no downforce. If I go a bit faster than that, that means there'll still be no heat in the tyres and no downforce, and I'm going even faster and I will crash. The only way from where I am now is a lot faster. Then I'll have heat in the tyres and grip and I won't crash.
Well, it is likely that he needs to go a whole lot faster. That isn't going to happen on this circuit. The biggest thing with keeping the temperature in the tyres is actually getting the temperature in the brakes. You really need to put all that force through the brakes, get them up to those 800 degrees, and then the heat will transfer through the brakes through the hub of the wheel, through the wheel, and then into the tyre. And that's really where you do the real work in keeping the tyres warm. The other way that you keep the tyres warm is through high downforce. When the car's got lots of downforce pushing it into the track, it squashes the sidewall of the tyres like this continuously, which generates a lot of heat.
And to make things worse, the man with my telemetry was hardly a bag of laughs.
There's a big gap between where you're lifting off and when you're braking. So you should be coming straight off the accelerator and going straight on the brakes straight away.
Right.
There's no need to have that big gap in there.
Did you say a big gap? How big a gap is it?
Half a second between you lifting off
Massive, is
before you go in the brakes. It should be straight away.
So yes, again, a bit of drama being added here by the engineer. Granted, you don't want to be taking half a second to get off the accelerator and on the brakes, but for the purposes of what Richard Hammond is trying to do here, that isn't going to make the slightest bit of difference. The biggest area where he'll need to work on is actually putting pressure through the pedal. Again, when the brakes are cold like this, you really need to push them hard, and they're very difficult to control when they're cold because as they're rotating, they're actually heating up, and that means that the friction from the pad to the disc is increasing as you decelerate, which is a really strange thing to do. So you really need to keep the temperature high in those brakes continuously in your time out on the track.
He was right though. If I was going to do 2 laps in this thing, I had to dig deep.
I've got to think about everything I've learned. It's just going mental. There's no temperature in the brakes. They feel like they're not working. Oh, this is every dream.
I'd done a lap, just one more.
So just to stop there, because there's some really fun editing going on there. Some of the external shots I can see by the way the car's being driven, it's to add drama, and I doubt that it's Richard Hammond driving in the car because they're turning, they're braking, they're trying to flick the rear of the ram. That will be a pro driver who's driving the car on the external shots. And then even when it's locking up there, which is even more funny, they're adding the brake screeching sound effect afterwards. That car won't make that brake screeching sound when it locks up. So bit of artistic editing going on there again.
I suspect the chief mechanic had seen better, but as far as I was concerned, driving God.
And the most scary thing in the whole world. The last corner is coming up. I'm braking. It's turning left. I'm in second. I'm going to nail it to the line.
Oh. Again, there's a bit of editing going on there where he got sideways coming out the final corner there at Stowe. That won't have been him. That would have been a professional driver, I think, in the car. They wouldn't have really let him do that. There's not much runoff there on the outside of the circuit. The wall's pretty close, so I think that there's a pro driver there driving. They're getting those external shots that they've cut in here to the footage. If you enjoyed this video, please check out our other F1 videos, and if you're a racer, check out this short playlist that I've put together to make you faster on track.